What's up, YouTube? This is how to play Aether with Veilside, and today we want to cover a comprehensive guide called Building the Best Teams. So, as I've played this game since day one of its launch, even after following it in CN for at least a year, I've been thinking about things, and I now think I'm finally to the point where I can make this guide. If you want to build the best teams, you need to consider 7 different areas of the game. So in this video, I want to explain those areas to you in a relatively short video so you can become an AG Pro. But first, before we get into it, check this out. The first area that you want to consider in building the best teams is what I like to call the basics. What I mean by this is what it means to build up individual characters and how to do it most efficiently. Arctic Poseidon will be a perfect example since I've been meaning to build her on my third account anyway. Now, as you can see, my current attack is at 1708, and my current CP or character power is at 5,924, right? So my crit rate is also at 5%, and yeah. Now, whenever you level up your character, this is what you get. So it increased my attack from 1,643 to 1,733, and defense and my max HP, right? So flat attack is what you really want to prioritize when you first start the game, and really even as you're leveling. And I'll show you why. When it comes to skills, every skill, if not most skills on every character, are all based off of flat attack. So Ice Poseidon, summons ice crystals to attack her enemies, dealing ice damage, blah blah blah. Percentage of attack in total, right? That's her basic attack. Here's skill 1. And it says dealing ice damage equal to 300% of attack in total, and ice damage equal to percentage of attack in total. Skill 3, skill 3 here, dealing ice damage equal to 700% of attack to enemies along the way. It's based on attack. And her ultimate skill, of course, dealing ice damage equal to 840% of attack in total. Okay, now that's just a DPS, a damage per second person. But what about, a support character? It's the same thing. So Hera simply buffs the damage of your characters in the team, and she does some damage, right? So dealing light damage equal to 419% of attack. Skill 1, dealing light damage equal to 302.6% of attack. Skill 2, this is her buff, but dealing light damage equal to 873.8% of attack in total. So even her buff is based on her attack. Her skill 3, so skill 2, right? Skill 3, dealing light damage 2,346.1% of attack in total, and then her ultimate skill is just a pure buff, right? Okay, so that's a support character. We've seen a DPS now, we've seen a support character, but what about a healer? I mean, surely a healer would be based off something else, right? Well, let's check. So this is a Poseidon who's a healer, and her water damage equal to 312% of attack in total. Okay, that's her basic attack, of course. What about her heal? Restores the HP of all teammates within a certain range by 1,000 plus 25%, blah blah blah, of Poseidon's attack. Okay, this buff is simply a buff to increase your team's attack, but even that's still increasing the team's attack. Her skill 3 here is also dealing water damage equal to percentage of attack in total. And then her ultimate The max HP of all members in the team is raised by 10%. The effect, which stacks up to 3 times, restores to the entire team HP to 3,000 plus 50% of Poseidon's attack. So even her heals are based off of attack. That is to say that every single character that you can ever get in this game, all of their skills are going to be based off of flat attack, which is a huge thing to consider when you're enchanting your sigils, but we'll get into more of that later. So when it comes to building a character, building the best teams, you have to build each character within that team to make it the best, right? And that means you need to start just one by one. So first things first is to level up your character in increments. I would say after you get maybe, let's say you're building Arctic Poseidon 2, right? After you get her to level 40 right here, just from limit breaking and then leveling her up to level 40. Oops. Okay, so now she's legitimately at level 40, right? So let's say that's your first increment and now you want to go to the next one. I would say the next thing to build is your access key. So access key, the term is kind of confusing, but don't let it be. Just think, when you hear access key, think weapon. That is what your character's access key is. It's their weapon. So leveling up your weapon here is this button up here where it says enhance. This right here is your functor, so don't get confused. A functor is completely different. A functor is just something to enhance your character even more and you know, change up their skills a little bit, and you get functors by polling with in-game currency or stars, and in the future there's going to be a way to actually farm for purple ones, right? So you can use a blue and purple functors for now. You don't need her signature functor like I have. It's fine. Just go for upgrading her access key first here, because as you can see on the screen, it also gives you flat attack when you upgrade it. So after you have sufficiently leveled up your Arctic Poseidon or your character in level, at least in the first increment, and then you've leveled up her access key in the first increment, let's say you want to get her to level 40, then I would say it's time to go ahead and start building her skills. But skills are really costly. Like, even if you farm these divine factors, you get so little. So it's gonna take some time to build up the skills. But skills would be your third priority in this progression, right? And then your fourth priority would be her codes. And oftentimes codes are locked behind proficiency, as in, you know, how often you use that character. Sometimes they're locked behind leveling up your skills to a certain level, because they will take a combination of all 5 skill levels, and sometimes they'll unlock based on that. So your codes will unlock soon, very quickly, as you continue to play the character and as you continue to upgrade their level and their access key and then their skills, right? The progression then is, for the basics of building the best teams, is starting with your character level, then your access key, then your skills, and then your codes. Don't worry about chips for now. Chips come into play at level 80, sometimes maybe 70, and sigils, we will talk about that later in this guide. So one last thing to say about just the basics is you will find yourself farming for these materials to level up your character. You'll find yourself farming for these materials. And so what you want to do when you're farming is just to find a balance between the story and farming, because you only get so much stamina every day, and then you only have so many stamina pots, right? If you save them, like me, like I won't let myself go below 20, except maybe here if necessary, but even though that's the large, I try to keep 20 just for specific events. So You only have so much, so try to min-max it a little bit and think through how much stamina you have, and that will help you when it comes to farming for your characters. Your main goal is to get 3 main DPS first, and then spread teams out through those main 3 DPS. And that is the first part, or the basics, of building the best teams. The second category for building the teams comes down to your pet choice, or your Mimir Cat. The first cat that you get is this pink cat here called Mimtastic. And so when you look at this, it actually restores the health of modifiers to their full HP when they take fatal damage, but it decreases their damage and their healing effects by 10% for the rest of the battle when this effect is triggered, right? And that effect stacks up to 5 times. So that means if you're not really good at dodging and the content is just too hard and it keeps killing you, this cat is really perfect for you to learn how to dodge better. But it's also kind of limiting you as well, because if you get hit a lot, you're going to be taking 50% less healing effect, and you're going to be dealing 50% less damage, right? But this cat still is useful even to me to today. Like, I still use it when I'm in a desperate situation and I don't want to keep dying, especially when it comes to the difficulty of hazard zone cleaning. And usually what I will pair with it, so you get a cat and then you get these little meow chips, right? And you can add 2 chips onto the cat every time you take it out in battle. Usually I will pair these together. So first is Rift Surge. Extends other allied modifiers' invincibility during the duration of it by 1 second after they successfully breakfall or dodge. So let's say you have the huge centaur-like Kusherfang boss swinging at you, and you can see his red circle on the ground, and it's about to hit you. The red circle is filling up to the perimeter, and you miss when it hits the perimeter, so you don't get the 0-time dodge, right? But you do dodge like a split second right after. So all of a sudden your character will disappear, you'll hear a sword clash sound, and then you'll reappear and you'll be missed, right? Or maybe Kusherfang will actually hit you just towards the end of his attack, so you won't take as much damage. That is the invincibility breakfall. That's what breakfall is, right? But this is saying that this chip, it adds your invincibility during that breakfall state or your dodge an extra 1 second. So it's now a split second plus an extra 1 second. So with this chip on there, Kusherfang, even if you technically did get hit towards the end of his swing, it wouldn't deduct your damage because you were invincible for an additional duration of 1 second. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's a really good defensive chip to add on to this cat who's already healing you. The second one I like to use is also called Emergency Rescue, where it says the modifiers consume 2.5 times the dodge energy to take 50% less damage when they're hit, and this effect triggers once every 30 seconds. Still, even if it's every 30 seconds, it's really good because you're taking 50% less damage. So you're not only getting heals from the pink cat, you're taking 50% less damage. So it's a good option. But when it comes to, these Mimir cats, I don't typically roll with that one. I will usually go with this Meninja or this Meow. When it comes to the Meninja, this is probably my favorite one, because when you're modifying level, which is at the top left of your screen over here whenever you're fighting, right? When it's up to Omega, it increases the crit rates of your teammates by 10%, and it increases the ultimate skill charge by 1% whenever their attacks crit. So on this team, well, with Buzumbo and Tsukiyomi and even Aether Thondi, right? They have a lot of crit. These ninja girls especially have a lot of crit, and that means they're working together with this cat. So their ultimate skill charge is being charged up even more as their attacks crit, which is really cool. When it comes to the chips that I like to put on this cat, it's battlefield dominance for sure, increases the modifier's attack by 5% for every enemy on the field, up to a maximum of 20%. So I use this when there's a lot of trash mobs to clear, like AGI mechas and whatever. You know, there's like 10 or 20 monsters on the screen that you need to kill, and there's usually like 2 or 3 waves of them. So that's really good. But sometimes it's not the best because you will have to fight a boss. So then I'll usually switch it to Shadow Hunter, which is another offensive chip because it's red, and it extends the modifier's 0 time duration by 1 second. As you get better in this game, you'll start to, dodge in the best ways. You'll start to dodge perfectly, and you'll trigger 0 time all the time. And so it's extending your 0 time by 1 second, which is allowing you to do more damage since you do more damage in 0 time. And that also works together with this one, Marginal Benefit, which increases the modifier's damage by 15% when they are in 0 time or modified mode, which is huge because you're going to be triggering 0 time all the time and modified mode, sometimes, right? Often, but not as often as 0 time. So these are really helping you do more damage. That's usually what I would like to do. Also, just as an added bonus, you can actually save these in this little current plan area, right? So you just type in a name. You can't use spaces. So max damage in 0 time and modified mode. There you go. And then we have crit and modified mode 0 time. So yeah, you can save those so you don't have to keep choosing them every single time. So this leads us to our third category for building the best teams, and that requires the consideration of Gen Zone faction. So we're going to go to as Tsukiyomi. Whenever you go to any character, their Gen Zone faction is always in the same spot, and it's right here on the top right. You see this little icon, it's a flower looking thing. Well, that's called Shino, right? So this is your Gen Zone information, and these are all the buffs that you'll get based on building a team based on Gen Zone faction. Okay, so this first sentence is a little confusing, but I'm gonna help you understand it as we talk through it. So just think of like this here, combat bonus, you see that? That's one category, right? And then modified bonus, this is another category. So you have 2 categories of buffs, right? That's what you want to keep in mind when we go over this. So let's read it together. The team may obtain additional Gen Zone effects during modified mode when there are 2 modifiers of the same Gen Zone on the battlefield. And when there are 3 modifiers of the same Gen Zone on the field, they will receive bonus buffs during the combat. So that's why it's a little confusing, because the titles of these categories are not exactly the same, but if you look at them, you can tell which one goes where. This is a Chinese game, so they made it kind of go right to left, but it's whatever. So basically what it's saying is that when you have 2 characters in your team of the same Gen Zone faction. Alright, so when you have 2 characters of the same Gen Zone faction in your team, this is saying that you will get a modified mode bonus. So for Shino, since I have Buzumbo together with Tsukiyomi, with just those 2, I'm going to get, after exiting modified mode, deals damage to the enemy equal to a certain percentage of the damage they received while in modified mode. Okay, so it's essentially saying that with both Tsukiyomi and Buzumbo together in my team, I'm going to be doing significantly higher damage than normal right after I exit modified mode, and that the height of that damage is based on how much damage I actually did in modified mode before I exited. So once I exit modified mode, I'm going to be doing higher damage for a temporary period of time. That's basically what it is. Now, if I were to put 3 people in my team here that were Shino, let's do Ryugiri. So that you can see it, 3 of the same Genzo factions, right? So with 3 of them, I'm going to increase my modifier's damage according to the number of enemies they face. So if we were killing a whole bunch of trash mobs, it would increase the damage really high based on the amount of enemies on the field. So this team on the screen is actually a perfect example for you to see, and it's what I call my Scotty survival team. As you can see, we have Vidar, we also have Aether, and we have Scotty. This team that you see fighting on the screen starts off with full combat resources and never runs out of combat resources because they are refreshed every time I go into modified mode, which is where the screen cracks and it seems like you just entered into the quantum realm, right? So they are Team Yggdrasil. So with 3 of them, it's saying I'm getting both of these buffs, and it's saying first of all, my combat resources are at a maximum whenever I start the battle. So Vidar has full rage, and both Verthandi and Scotty have full divine grace. And then whenever I enter modified mode, it restores my combat resources to maximum again, increasing the resource charge speed by 100%. So not only does it refresh my combat resources in modified mode, but as I'm using the resources, it's restoring it with a charge speed by 100%. So that's really good for Team Yggdrasil. Fourthly on our list of 7 categories for building the best teams is combining characters based on their ultimate skill chain. Now, as you go to the skills tab right here, for every single character, it stays the same as you can see. You can click right here on the top right, Ultimate Skill Chains. And that's where you can see what Buzenbo, for example, who she has an ultimate skill chain with, right? So first and foremost, for your own account, you want to look through all of the characters under the skills tab so you can see what skill chains they have. So just quickly do it, you know, I mean, some characters have 2, some have 3, some only have 1, and as more characters start to come out, we will get more skill chains. So you can build teams in the future as well. Okay, so do that. First, check into all your characters and see what skill chains you have. Next, once you find, you know, a main DPS that you want to level up and start making your best team with, like Tsukiyomi, for example, you will be presented with 2 or 3, maybe more in the future, who knows, but you'll be presented with a couple options to choose from. And sometimes these wordings within these skill chains can get a little confusing, so I'm just going to tell you it's not necessary to read them, especially if you're not a math person. You can if you want, and it is necessary once you get used to things later on. But for now, all you have to do is compare the numbers to see which ones are higher and which ones are lower. So when it comes to Tsukiyomi with Buzenbo, this is her skill chain and the effect that happens. And the same thing is down here with Tsukiyomi and Verthandi, right? So when we compare, we just go straight to the first parentheses with numbers. It's in the red. So with Buzenbo, I'm getting 1000% of damage of attack, right? Plus 25.64% times her ultimate skill level. Okay, so without even doing the math, all you got to do is look down. So Buzenbo is giving me 1000%. The Aether is giving me 840%. Buzenbo is giving me 25.64%, and Aether is giving me 21.54%. So less in both cases, right? And so you can do that again underneath With Bosom Bow, she gives thunder damage boost of 30% for 10 seconds, just like Verthandi, but Verthandi gives 30% thunder damage boost for 12 seconds, so there's a slight difference. Then we come to another parentheses, and with Bosom Bow you get 360%, and with Verthandi you get 350%. With Bosom Bow you get 9.23%, and with Verthandi you get 8.97%. You see, so it's self-explanatory, you get the picture. There are certain slight differences, like on the very bottom here it says all members with Bosom Bow team are granted a 7.5 ultimate skill charge for every additional enemy that she lands an attack on, right? But with Verthandi, it's a 15% ultimate skill charge rate that is granted to the team when she lands a hit. So even though there is a slight difference of ultimate charge speed, in my personal opinion, I think the attack is most important because you can get ultimate skill chain charge speed from other areas. So even though I like Tsukiyomi and Verthandi's cutscene or ultimate skill chain better, it looks so much cooler, I use this one with Bosom Bow because it's stronger. It's more effective, right? So this is what you have to do when you find a character that has multiple options, and just kind of look through them just to find out which is the best one, the strongest one. So I would just encourage you to take your time and to just look through all of your characters to check out not only their ultimate skill chains, but to think through how that ultimate skill chain will work with the Gen Zone factions that we've already covered in building best teams. Our fifth category for building the best teams is based on, yep, you guessed it, element. Now, building teams based on element is pretty self-explanatory for most people because most games choose this path for team comps. But in Aether Gazer, it is especially important for you to consider because at level 80, Reoccurring Dream, the game mode that you constantly want to do to get more character shards to rank up your favorite characters, becomes more and more difficult. But at the highest difficulty, though the bosses here are incredibly strong, they have a major elemental weakness, which gives you the upper hand in the fight. So this team would be perfect for Reoccurring Dream when I find a boss that has a weakness to wind. So my main damage dealer will be S. Osiris, of course, and then I have A. Shu, and then I have A. Hermes to make a complete wind team. Now, this wind team that you see before you is an absolutely amazing team. I'm still in the process, of course, of building A. Shu because I've just discovered this, but after talking with some leaders in my guild, what A. Shu and A. Hermes bring to the table for S. Osiris is absolutely overpowered. So for a quick look, let's look at Hermes first. So when it comes to her ultimate skill, she puts a 30% wind resistance debuff on the enemy for 10 seconds. You see that? For 10 seconds. And gives a 2% boost of the team's ultimate skill charge speed every time one of them crits with a normal attack. Also, in her blue codes, if you want more CC, you can go the blue route, and on blue code 3, she actually pulls in the surrounding enemies with blue streak. This is an additional CC for your win team. Now, when it comes to A. Shu, however, she makes things even better for Osiris. So first of all, A. Shu's red codes, on her third red code, she brings an additional debuff of 10% of wind resistance for 10 seconds. Okay? And when it comes to her skills, her ultimate skill gives her the ability to not only enter into zero time for an extended period of 4 seconds, and zero time is not normally 4 seconds, so she's already breaking that barrier. But her ultimate skill also gives an 8% ultimate skill charge boost. every time someone uses traces. And on this team, 2 out of 3 units are using traces. So Win Team is not to be trifled with. Number 6 of our 7 categories for building the best teams is something you may not have even considered before, but it is something that I think is pivotal to how effective you are on the field. And that is your team's range, the distance between your modifiers and the enemies. How are you to build the best teams? You can build the best teams when considering range. And with the example here on the screen, we have Buzumbo, Asura, and S. Poseidon. When it comes to your options for different ranged units, this team shows a perfect balance of all of them in order to consistently work the field. Buzumbo, who usually hits Omega rank very quickly, is a short range, high crit, in-your-face, constant damage unit. Asura is mid-range, a burst fire damage, damage over time or dots, has longer range than you think, and has a bubble for extra crowd control. Lastly, S. Poseidon is long range with the ability to constantly spam and freeze enemies with piercing ice damage that just seems to never end. All 3 of these units are future-proof, and CN 2.3 to this day is still using them very frequently. If I could suggest getting a signature functor for one of these 3 DPS units, I would say get one for both Asura and Arctic Poseidon. You can't go wrong. Here's a short battle so you can see how this team works together, even without the Gen Zone faction or an ultimate skill chain. We're going to collect the enemies together first. Poseidon's going to freeze them, and we can do more AoE that way. Buzumbo's in their face, dealing out a lot of damage. I'm staying mid-range, so I don't get hit. And of course, Poseidon is in the back, doing her long range. Some more short range here. Might as well do this. Okay, I don't know how she got so close, but... Alright, and that's it. So now you can see that just by mere range, a team can be efficient. Alright, so let's recap. We have now seen 6 categories for building the best teams. We've seen how to build the best teams based on the basics. We've seen how to build the best teams based on using the proper Mimir Cat and its additional chips. We've seen how to build the best teams based on Gen Zone faction. We've seen how to build the best teams based on ultimate skill chains. We've seen how to build the best teams based on element. We've seen how to build the best teams based on range, and now we finally come to our last category for building the best teams, and that is based on sigils. Now, when it comes to building the best teams based on sigils, this team lineup serves as one of the best examples I can think of at this point in the game. When it comes to sigils, if you don't already know, these things take a lot of materials to level up, enchant, reconstruct, and upgrade all the more in the future. So choosing the right sigils is really important to how your team functions. And I will be the first to tell you that the best sigils are not always the recommended sigils. So here we have S. Osiris, Aeshu, and Hera for support, right? So when you first look at my team here, we have several of the 7 categories above. Theoretically speaking, we have the basics if Aeshu was built up fully, right? We have the basics here. We have the proper Mimir Cat and its additional chips. We have the same Gen Zone faction. And we have an ultimate skill chain. And we also have a combination of range. But using the proper sigils on this team will increase its ability 100-fold. And this is something that many people who play Aether actually don't know. So there are actually certain sigils that you can equip on one character in the skill chain that directly affect the other character in the skill chain. This sigil here on the screen, which I just simply call Nibble, is what I'm talking about. So if you put 3 of these on a single character, it's going to increase their ultimate skill charge speed by 30%. Okay, that means they're going to proc their ultimate skill 30% faster. And it's also going to increase the ultimate skill damage by 30%. So what I'm saying is that this sigil is special because it actually affects the ultimate skill charge speed of the other person in the skill chain. So if you were to put 3 of these on Osiris, for example, it's going to increase Shu's ultimate skill chain that is shared with Osiris. That is huge. That is huge when it comes to maximizing your damage and making the best teams. But wait, there's more. I mean, if you think about it, let's say you put 3 of these on both Osiris and Shu. That means you're going to be getting 60% of the charge speed, and you're also going to be getting 60% of the ultimate skill damage with both of them on the same skill chain, which doesn't even mention the fact that Shu is bringing in 8% ultimate skill charge speed with her as well in her own kit. So you're getting a 68% ultimate skill charge speed, and you're getting a 60% ultimate skill damage boost with putting these sigils on both people who share the skill chain. And that's not everything. Now let's say you put those 3 sigils on Hera as well. So you have 3 on Osiris, you have 3 on Shu, and now you're going to put 3 more on Hera here. So this is what I mean by the recommended sigils not always being the best. Now, as you can see on the screen, her recommended sigils are with Virgo's Meteor and Jormungandr, right? So this one, Virgo's Meteor, it decreases the skill and ultimate skill by 1.5 seconds, the cooldown of it, when 0 time is triggered. And of course, Jormungandr is what gives her energy, and she is also a energy hungry unit, much like Asura, so she needs her energy, especially when we hit 1.5 and we get the new energy sigils, which are just going to make our lives so much better. But what if you were to equip her signature functor, giving you 0 time on demand while also replacing Virgo's Meteor with Nibble sigils, like the setup I have here? This would give her the additional 30% ultimate skill charge speed boost for her special, which buffs the whole team, and since she constantly triggers 0 time, that itself will increase the ultimate skill charge speed for both her and her teammates, since 0 time dodges themselves boost the ultimate skill charge speed all the more. Now, just imagine getting them all to Omega and putting on Virgo's Meteor on each of them with traces, with Nibble sigils, and man, you would be really cooking. So as you can see, the type of sigils that you place on your team can also greatly impact your gameplay to put together one of the best teams possible. There you go, you made it. You finally reached the end of the guide. This concludes our guide on building the best teams with the basics, with the proper Mimir Cat, with the proper factions, with ultimate skill chains, with the best elements, with a balance of range, and finally with OP sigils. I hope this video was a help to you and makes your AG experience even more fun. Thanks for watching. Peace.